Good morning all, and welcome to a blustery but wonderful summer's morning, another one. And Wansford Pasture, Wansford Meadow, eagerly anticipated. Always a good trip, looking forward to this one. And yeah, I don't think well, I hope the drought hasn't affected them. I mean, most of the orchids are running along, certainly the first part of this visit, the orchids are running along a stream, so I'm hoping it stays reasonably damp for them and they'll be fit and well. So let us go and see. Looking forward to this. That's a typical Wansford, nicely coloured southern marsh orchid. The first of our probably a hybrid category. I think that's probably a Wintonii hybrid between southern marsh and early marsh, simply because of those looped markings, which you don't tend to get this boldly on a southern marsh, which this otherwise looks like. So that's an early marsh cross southern marsh as far as I'm concerned. Nice early find. Nice to get a good traditional untouched pure common spotted orchid in the bag early on. You don't, I mean, you do get quite a few of these later on the walk, but down this end of Wansford Meadow, just sort of marshy section, you don't actually get too many pure common spottage generally. Some nice sturdy plants. We're a little bit later this year. I do usually come down earlier than this, and I've done that deliberately to try and catch these closer to their prime. I mean, this one is absolutely spot on. Hardly a bud left to open, so it's absolutely at its peak. Pure southern marsh. Well, I said I wasn't sure the drought would have an impact. The drought has had an impact. The numbers are significantly down. I mean, this place can cope with that. It's still a great place. There'll still be orchids, but numbers are well down, and I could feel underfoot that it's absolutely bone dry. It's like concrete. And down here where these reeds are, it's usually quite damp. You can be wading into sort of 3 or 4 inches of water many a season. Not today. But like I say, this place could survive. There'll still be some good orchids here. A nice, typically boldly coloured southern marsh orchid. Yet to see a Grandees hybrid. I'm sure we will find some. Another southern marsh with very strong looped markings. I suspect again it looks like it's a Wintonii hybrid. I might reconsider when I look close up on a computer, but those markings are quite distinctive. And there's another one next to it, so there's a little cluster of them here, which makes sense. And as I say, the markings are very distinct. They're not just loops, they're early marsh orchid loops, which are distinctive. Very, very distinctive early marsh loops. They're sort of angular but tall and thin loops rather than sort of rugby ball shaped loops. Classic early marsh. So that's another Wintonii hybrid. Just walked into one of the wet flushes that comes down the hillside here, and it is definitely damp here, so these are a lot happier. Another one. Look at those markings. That's a Wintonii hybrid, and right next to it is a standard southern marsh. If we just drop down for comparison. more typical southern marsh, light coloured throat, spots down the middle. Whereas the Wintonia's got those very bold loops, typical of an early marsh orchid. See the leaves? Spotted leaves at last. Grandice hybrid, common spotted common spotted and southern marsh hybrid, cross Grandice. Got one at last. That's a nice and classically marked pale or paler southern marsh orchid. Common spotted orchid. I think it's only the second one we've seen down here. Probably why there's not too many Grandice hybrids at this end of the reserve, or this end of Wansford. I don't think this is actually part of the reserve, but yeah, not too many common spotteds down here. Southern marsh orchid. I thought it was going to be a hybrid because those markings are quite sort of liney, made up of lines rather than spots. More typical of common spotted, but there's no marks on the leaves, it's a hollow stem. It's a southern marsh orchid, just to confuse us all. A nice vibrantly coloured southern marsh with a happy bee sitting on the bottom, warming up. Southern marsh? Absolutely not. Well, you should always start at the bottom. See those leaves spotted. Stem is like a paper straw. It's a marsh orchid stem. And then, as you would expect, a mixed bag in the flower. Always start at the bottom. Look for the spotty leaves, and then you know it's not a southern marsh orchid. Very, very spotty leaves. Grandice hybrid. Looks like a hybrid rather than a southern marsh, but I'm deliberately doing this backwards. You should start at the bottom. Spots on the leaves, it's a common spotted in here, which means it is either common spotted or it's a common spotted southern marsh hybrid, which is what it is. I can't get through to the leaves on this one. It's an interesting one actually because it's quite a common spotted shaped flower. It's certainly a very common spotted set of markings, and I'm actually going to call it a common spotted even though it's got the palette of a southern marsh. It's got the colour of a southern marsh, but it's a common spotted orchid thrown in to confuse us. Nice pure southern marsh, no arguments. Another of the highly likely, I would suggest, in fact absolutely definitely, looking at that flower at the bottom, southern marsh orchid cross early marsh orchid, Dactylorhiza cross Wintonii. Can't be any doubts with markings like that. I've never seen an early marsh orchid on this site, but I'm probably late for them now anyway. Right, we'll move on from stage one towards stage two. Yeah, it was okay actually. You know, I said they were numbers were significantly down. They were in the sort of first part of where we were walking, but once it started to get wetter, where the sort of flushes, as they call them, are coming down the hill into that marshy area, there was water. I mean, I've got wellies on and I needed them, so they were wet enough to grow. They're well advanced, so I've took a bit of a risk coming this late really, but they're still good. And the numbers are okay at the back end of this section, so down overall, but not massively so, and still great to see. Surprised by the number of Wintonii hybrids, and I'm confident that's what they are. I've never really noticed them in that number here before. I've seen the odd one, but they seem to almost dominate that patch, so something to be said there. Right, yeah, going to wander down, cross the stream, and then head across towards the next part, the actual reserve part of Wansford Meadow or Wansford Pasture. Always find a few on the way over, so usually some damn good common spotted, so fingers crossed. Yeah, there's still water running. It's spring fed as well, so that's why it's still running despite the lack of rain. I think there's always water here to one degree or another. Right, this is the field I dismissed last year as looking fantastic for orchids, but never has any, and then promptly tripped over several bee orchids, so you never know, might do it again this year. Also the Marsh orchids. There's a claim for a big one of the biggest we've seen at the back there. Maybe not. It's a good effort though. Starting to get worried now. I'm calling so many of these Wintonii hybrids, but what am I supposed to do? They're just not classic. I know the southern marsh is a very variable plant, but those markings seem very distinctive and very clearly derived from an early marsh orchid. So I'm going to keep calling it a Wintonii hybrid. Usually find some nice common spotted down here, but I'm struggling a wee bit at the moment. There's a little one down there, but nothing as spectacular as we usually get. That's a better one. At least it's got some height to it. Common spotted orchid with that almost southern marsh orchid palette, which makes you think, if I hadn't looked at the bottom and the stem, what I said, it could have been a hybrid, but it looks, everything looks right for common spotted really. Stick with that. Common spotted again. Starting to lose that one, but it's a nice pale or paler form of southern marsh orchid. And don't do what I've just done, which is what I've preached to people not to do, just to look at the flower and say, oh, nice pale southern marsh orchid. It's not. It has spots on the leaves. I won't try and show you because I can't get the camera in amongst all the overgrown brambles and whatever down there. So it does have spots on the leaves. It's a Grandis hybrid, or is it a common spotted orchid? Let me just check the stem. That's a bit not too sure. I'll leave that on the not too sure. It's either a Grandis hybrid or a common spotted. I'd probably, yeah, I'll go for it. Grandis hybrid. Probably wrong. Toss of a coin. It's not a southern marsh orchid. That's a richly coloured, hinting towards northern marsh, which of course it isn't. It's a southern marsh, and again with early marsh markings on it, so it's another Wintonii hybrid. Honest. Clonker. typical of what we will hopefully see in the next field, where there's quite a few like this. Yeah, overload of markings on there, spots everywhere. There are spots on the leaves, and yeah, it's another of those. I'm going to call it a common spotted orchid. If someone argues it's a Grandees hybrid, I ain't going to argue with them. It's unusual for this colour palette for a Grandees hybrid, so I'm going to stick to common spotted. And a nice one. Another nicely marked common spotted orchid, carrying a bit of a Southern Marsh palette just to make life very confusing, but it's common spotted. A couple of nicely marked common spotteds, spotty leaves, rock solid stems. There's no marsh orchid in these, but if you were coming from top down you'd be thinking hybrid at the very least, but it's not. Just a nicely marked common spotted, or pair of common spotteds. Some good numbers of Southern Marsh down here. There's one or two other interesting items down here I would not be expecting. Bear with me. What have we got down here? Bee orchid. What have we got down there? Another bee orchid. There's a few more behind me. We found a bee orchid spot. Nice to see. I don't think I've ever seen a cluster of bee orchids down here before. Seen the odd one in the field, but there's half a dozen of them down here. That's quite a large Grandees hybrid, spotty leaves, very broad stem. Common spotted cross Southern Marsh. Nicely marked common spotted. So it's a cracking bee orchid patch. This is number 12 that I've seen down here. I'm obviously not going to film them all, but yeah, 12 bee orchids, and there's another one just next to it as well. That's the 13th bee orchid in this patch. Well, we found one that's still in the field, so I think the prevailing wind blows down into where the stream is, where we've just climbed out of, and I think the seed from these has blown down and created that wonderful 14 bee orchid patch, which is pretty impressive. That's brilliant. You always get a few orchids, a few decent ones as you walk between the two meadows here at Wansford. I've never seen what ended up as being 15 bee orchids in a pretty short period of time. That's more than I've seen at any other site here in Peterborough. I think Swaddywell would beat it today, but that's a good turnout for bee orchids, and I've not seen that here before, just seen the odd one in the meadow. So that's a nice, pleasant, enjoyable surprise. I was rather hoping I might find a Belgarum or something equally as rare, but I'll settle for what I saw. Nice little meadow setting for another one. That's 16 now. This one up in the field. Oh, go on then. Pyramidal orchid. Not a fan of these, as you probably know. Not because they're ugly things, but because they signify, or they signal, the end of the orchid season, and I don't want that yet. I want a few more weeks. It's funny, I've got down low here to get a picture of it, and all I can see around me is bee orchids. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bee orchids at least. You can't see it on here, but they're in the background. There are, trust me, 6B orchids. Just going to have a look at them to see if there's anything special going on. You never know. I'm sure there was some fool 2 weeks ago that said bee orchids are just having a bad year and they're just not turning up. Got to learn to be patient. I mean, this I'm up in the meadow now. I've just sort of walked across this meadow that I always think looks good for orchids, and I have seen bee orchids here before, just the odd one or two, but I'm in a patch here about 20 foot square, and this is the 12th bee orchid in that patch. There's no bellgarums, there's no wasps, there's nothing outstanding yet, but it is absolutely rammed full of bee orchids. Brilliant sight and a big surprise. It's got some nice markings on it. It's the sort of orchid that you see at Souththorpe Meadow a lot. I used to call them the ultra spotty southern marsh orchids. I mean, clean stem, sorry, clean leaves, there's no spots on them, and very broad hollow stem, pure marsh orchid all the way up really. So you've got to take the flower as being a southern marsh orchid. It could I mean, it's possible it's a grandis simply on the flower alone, but I think you'd be wrong to call it because everything else is telling you it's a southern marsh orchid, and a glorious one too. Those markings are fantastic. As I say, it's the sort of thing you see a lot of at Souththorpe Meadow. Still lots of southern marsh. Not the most spotty of leaves, but definitely spots on those leaves. Stem like a tree trunk, and it's hollow. So straight away, without even seeing a flower, I know this is a grandis hybrid. Nothing in the flowers that say different. This is a cross common spotted southern marsh. Nice collection of pure southern marsh orchids. With the exception of that one that appears to have those early marsh loops on them again. Nice pale common spotted orchid. Getting a bit obsessed with these now because I keep telling myself it can't be. These can't all be hybrid southern marsh, early marsh, but the markings are so distinctive, they really can't be anything else. Ooh, that stands out. It's a white pyramidal. That is unusual to get a white, pure white pyramidal orchid this early in the season. A beauty as well, pristine, pure white pyramidal orchid, very nice. Right, entering the second part of the meadow, or part of Wansford Pasture stroke meadow, call it what you will. This is usually when it goes up a notch or two, but that's going to have to be quite an achievement after what we've seen, which has been impressive so far. Very typical of what we're going to be seeing in and around this field. A nicely marked, common spotted orchid. Alright, this is where the fun starts. I've probably bored you with this story before, and I'm no geology expert, but this ledge we're going over now, and we can look alongside it into the distance. This steep slope. To the left you've got limestone, and to the right you've got clay. And what happens is the water runs under the limestone to the left and comes out. You don't see massive like waterfalls and streams, but it seeps out in what they tend to call flushes, and it carries limestone sediment down, and that is what causes this to be one of the most magnificent orchid sites I've seen anywhere in the country, as hopefully you're going to see in a minute. But they kind of feed off the waters that are coming off this slope and running down across this field. Let's go and prove the case. Common spotted. And another one, nicely marked. Common spot is dominating at the moment, and why not? Quite happy with that. Group of Grandees hybrids, hollow stems, spotty leaves. Just check the stem out on this one. Is actually it's a Grandees hybrid. I wouldn't have called it as such. If I was coming top down I'd have gone common spotted probably, but it's a Grandees hybrid. That's a very nice one. I mean, it's got spots on leaves. The stem's kind of slightly soft but not totally convincing that it's hollow, so that could be a common spotted orchid. Which is where my leanings would be, but it could also be a Grandees hybrid. Whatever it is, it's a beautiful orchid, really is. Very bold markings on that one. The stem is tree trunk. It's a Grandees hybrid, or it's a pair of Grandees hybrids if you prefer. Some sort of green cricket-like creature, smiling at the camera. Another of these wannabe pretend northern marsh orchid that are actually southern marsh orchid, but you can see the colour. People talk about the colour between the colour distinction, sorry, between northern and southern, but there is a huge overlap. You could move this up to the north and it would get away colour wise, certainly, with being a northern marsh orchid. It lacks other characteristics of the northern marsh, but colour wise, from a distance, you could be sold on that being a northern marsh orchid. And yes, it's got those loops on again. I'm going to have to get some opinions on these. There cannot be this many Wintonii hybrids, surely. Nice common spotted. Got to say the common spotted are winning the battle down here in terms of quality. Very nice common spotted. In fact, there's a nice pair of common spotteds here side by side. Both of them nicely marked. Very good. That's a lovely petite little orchid that from a distance you could call anything really, but it's got spotted leaves, it's got a solid stem. It is a common spotted orchid, but they don't have to make it difficult if you're trying to distinguish between them and southern marsh and Grandees hybrids, but you have to just look at the leaves, check out the stem. That's a common spotted orchid, a very nice one. Spotted leaves, stems like tree trunks and very hollow. Plastic straw material. Grandees hybrids without even looking at the flower. Flowers. Very nice. Grandees hybrid. Common spotted. I like that one. Another common spotted. There it is. And it's not what a lot of you probably thought it was going to be. This is a pure white common spotted orchid. And I don't see many of these. I get close, but that is a beauty. Pure, in great condition. Yeah, very, very nice. Very nice. I don't think I'll see better than that today. That's an absolute beaut. Grandees hybrid. Nicely marked common spotted orchid. That's a Grandees hybrid, determined solely by spotty leaves and a hollow stem rather than the flower. Always a magnificent sight. A nice patch of common spotteds and southern marsh orchids. Great to see. That was a white common spotted all the way until I got here, and then you see very faint pink markings on it, so it's not a white, just close. What an elegantly beautiful common spotted orchid that is. Really is stylish looking. Spots absolutely everywhere on every single element of the flower, which is unusual. Impressed by that. Beautiful flower. Another lovely common spotted. Definitely winning the day here. Another clonker of a common spotted. Now that could have been good. Two pure white common spotted side by side. But the one on the right is, I can't see any markings on that at all. I'm happy that's a white. This one possibly is a white, and given that it's next to it, you probably would suggest it should be, but I'm pretty sure I see some very, very faint markings on it. I could ignore that and say they're both white, but certainly the one on the right is. Nice pairing though. They're all common spotteds, carrying a sort of southern marsh colour palette just to make life difficult, but they are common spotted. The stems are solid, the leaves are most definitely spotty. Common spotted orchids. Grandees hybrid, big one. with a hairy critter at the bottom. You heard me say that. How good is that? Orchid lover's dream. Dactylorhiza nightmare. I don't care, it's all fun. Grandees hybrid, spotty leaves, hollow stem. Hybrid. Lovely family group of common spotted orchids. These are the sort of orchids that make you want to sit there and write a different book, really, because I mean, looking at that from top down, it's more of a, in terms of flower shape, it's Southern Marsh. In terms of colour palette, it's probably Southern Marsh. The markings are more common spotted. The spots on the leaves and the stem is solid, so it is common spotted. But they're certainly out to fool anyone who's trying to distinguish, because they do a good impression of looking, at least colour wise, like a Southern Marsh orchid, but it's not. Looking back along that bank that sort of separates the limestone from the clay, there's not a lot of orchid life going on here. When you find one of these flushes where the grass suddenly gets richer, so you can't see a stream, the water is just running close to the surface down from here, and there's almost a trail of orchids that follow the flush down the hill as far as you can see. They know it's there, and they're picking up on the limestone rich water that's coming down. Grandees hybrid. Actually struggling to find a Southern Marsh that isn't a hybrid now. I will find one now I've said that, but there aren't many. They're mostly hybrids now. That's because there's a lot of common spotteds in this field. A lot. They dominate. Grandees hybrid. No. Common spotted. How can you not get confused? Answer is go from bottom up. Spotted leaves, woody, solid stem, completely common spotted, whatever the flowers are doing. That is a common spotted orchid. I only saw the flower on this one. Because of the richness of the colour palette, it's a no-brainer. Southern Marsh orchid. The spots are not bold, but the leaves are covered in spots. The stem's soft, it's hollow. All the ingredients add up to a Grandees hybrid, but that's an unusual Grandees hybrid. Very rich in colour and very Southern Marsh looking. Although if I look closely, it's got those early Marsh type loops on it, so we're back in that territory again. That's a lovely tall Grandees hybrid. Probably some first generation hybrid vigour going on with this one. Spotty leaves, broad stem, big flower head, Grandees hybrid, a big one. And he's got his mate next door who's almost as big. I wouldn't mind betting they are Grandees hybrids, and probably first generation Grandees hybrids because they're significantly bigger than the others around here. I'm going to prove myself wrong now. I was right for once. They're all Grandees hybrids. Well, the purple coloured ones are Grandees hybrid and they're all big, strong plants. Nicely marked Grandees. That's a pure Southern Marsh. There's no marks on the leaves at all. A question mark about the markings, but the shape and the colour palette are spot on, which is a Southern Marsh orchid. Hiding low in the grass, and it's starting to brown off, which kind of catches the eye, but that's a pure white common spotted orchid. Another one. Never seen so many in one site. That's good. Lovely common spotted. Spotty leaves, rock solid woody stem. But I've never seen a common spotted orchid looking like that. That looks 90% Southern Marsh. Yeah, very confusing indeed. This one's a tiddler, about 1.5 inches tall, the flower head. It's a Grandees hybrid, and one of the parents was obviously a pale Southern Marsh orchid. I mean, forget what's underneath these flowers, this is 100% Southern Marsh orchid. If you were just looking at the flower, I think you'd just about guarantee that was a Southern Marsh orchid. You could perhaps see some sort of womble eyes on the far right towards the top. But really that would be a Southern Marsh orchid, but you know, you probably can't see through all the grass. But down the bottom there, I promise you, there they are. There are spots on the leaves. And the stem is hollow. It's a Grandees hybrid, pale form. Another of those confusing common spotteds, and it is a common spotted. Solid stem, spotty leaves. It may not look like one from the flower perspective, but it is. Three tiny common spotted orchids in a family group here. The flower heads are about 1.5 inches tall. What do they look like on screen? These are real tiddlers, but they catch the eye. Really nice. We're starting to go full Ken fig here. You know, starting to see things I can't make any sense of. You know, Southern Marsh orchid all over, 100%. That's a Southern Marsh orchid. Markings, you've got those potential early Marsh. You've got the curling of the flower at the bottom, might say early Marsh as well. I don't know if you can see what's going on down there. It's difficult on here, but believe me, there are spots on the leaves. So there's a common spotted in there somewhere. I ain't so sure I can see where. Very strange. Good old Dactylorhizas. That's a very pleasing on the eye and somewhat unusual hollow, because all the other hollows are dominated by the purple Grandees hybrids and Southern Marsh, whereas this one is dominated by a quite pale common spotted orchid. Or at least I think they are. Find out when I get over there. Very nice. And yes, they are common spotted orchids. Probably the pick of the bunch or the pick of the family. Lovely markings. Nice pair of common spotteds. Okay, how good is this? absolutely stunning. Let's pick a few of these out. This is a very nicely marked common spotted orchid. Another nice common spotted. A very sort of delicately marked Grandees hybrid. That's a beauty. That is a pure Southern Marsh orchid, pale form, pure Southern Marsh orchid, and looks it. I'm sure we've seen one of these already, very, very strongly marked, and this is actually a Southern Marsh orchid. It's an unmarked leaves, very broad stems, a Southern Marsh orchid. Very strange. Come on, put a name on this one. Gloriously colourful. Unmarked leaves, no spots, clunker of a stem, completely hollow. Everything says, I'll get it in focus, everything says that's a Southern Marsh orchid. We call that one of the ultra spotty forms that we've seen at Souththorpe Meadow. Very nice. A glorious hollow this is. Glorious orchid hollow. Spotty leaves, solid stem, common spotted orchid. That doesn't look entirely like one, but it is. Beauty of a common spotted. Hollow stem, no spots on the leaves, Southern Marsh orchid. No way. We're back to where we started with those markings. I'm going to have to get some opinions on these. I can't see that this is anything other than a Southern Marsh cross early Marsh. We shall see. Lovely common spotted. There's a lot of lovely common spotted as well around here. His mate next door's scrubs up well. Big, clean, spotless leaves, stem like a tree trunk, completely hollow. Definitely Southern Marsh orchid. The Southern Marsh orchids generally have a light throat and a runway of spots coming down the front. They don't have two loops like that. The only marsh orchid that has loops that prominent are early marsh orchids. So again, this is another one in the category of a Wintonii hybrid, until someone tells me convincingly that they're not. You have a classic Grandees hybrid, bold spots on the leaves, very thick and hollow stem, and there's nothing in the flowers that would argue with the diagnosis of Grandees hybrid. The unmistakable rich purple of the Northern Marsh orchid, as if. Wouldn't it be great if we found one and put it on social media and everybody went bananas when we said it was at Wansford, the Southern Marsh orchid. And yeah, as I said previously, it just shows how dark Southern Marshes can go with a bit of effort. Right, that's it. I think we've done 3 hours, just under 3 hours now, so I could do another 2 or 3 hours here if the legs would last. There are thousands upon thousands of Dactylorhizas here, and if you've never been here before, and I do speak to people local and they say, oh no, I've never been to Wansford, you know, I mean, you are missing out on something very special. You come here in the next 7 to 10 days, and you can come down here now. Last couple of seasons it's been a no entry, strictly speaking, to come in this field, even though I've come in because of some incident with a dog that caused them to close it down for a while. It's now open. You're welcome to come in here and have a wander carefully. It'll blow your mind away. If you love orchids, you know, it will just knock you over. It's absolutely staggering. Huge numbers, magnificent common spotted, southern marsh and hybrids, and God only knows what some of them were. You know, I'm going to sit down and look at this as well as talk to one or two others, because you know, the sort of rules I had in my head kind of got destroyed, you know, in Kenfig style. Kenfig South Wales would do that to you. You see orchids down there that they just defy every book, every guidance that you've got, and you almost have to just say, oh, it's a Kenfig orchid, and maybe we just have Wansford orchids here, I don't know. They're magnificent orchids. I try to put a label on them because I feel under pressure and doing this video to try and put a label on what people are seeing, but really I'm out of my depth with some of these because, as I say, they just don't make any sense. So still wonderful. Come down, come down and make your own minds as to what they are. So what else can I mention? Bee orchids, geez, you know, there must have been 30 bee orchids as we crossed between the two meadows. I've never seen that before here. You know, that was an amazing piece of icing on the cake, and great to see that. So all in all, some parts of the two fields were not as good as previous seasons, others were better. So I think the net result is about the same. The thing that's probably shocked me most is that you've got some wonderfully fit and healthy in their prime orchids like these. There's others, I don't know if you can see, are virtually completely gone over, particularly marsh orchids. Grandies, a lot of them have gone past their best, and that's scaring me because the ultimate Dactylorhiza hybrid swarm is at Souththorpe Meadow, and I'm not scheduled to go there till the middle of part next week. I can't leave it. I can't dare leave it, having seen what I've seen here at Wansford, because my fear is I'll get to Souththorpe and they'll have gone over. So I'm going to have to change my schedule and probably go out there this week. But apart from that, absolutely brilliant, dead chuffed, magnificent, all the superlatives you can make up. Fantastic orchid site, and like I say, if you've not been here, give your head a wobble and get out here. You really need to get out here. So as I say, tomorrow, God knows, it could be Souththorpe Meadow, it could be a return to Castor, because that was on my schedule. I want to see what Castor Hanglands looks like later in the season instead of just early in the season. So I don't know what I'm doing yet, but there'll be another video. So thank you for joining me in this one, always appreciated. Don't forget to add your comments, and I hope to see you in the next video. And before I sign off, before someone screams into the screen, where's the white southern marsh orchid, the highlight of this meadow really in previous seasons? I don't know, I can't find it. I know roughly where it should be, it's not there. It's a big bold white thing, and you wouldn't miss it. I could spot the white common spotteds, and they're a lot smaller, so I don't think it's here. If someone finds it, good on them. I've seen it a few times now anyway. I'm sure it'll come back in future seasons, but the answer to your question as to where it was, I don't know. It's not here. So there you go. See you in the next one.